May 15th, 1944. A field somewhere in Kent. A sergeant from the Royal Engineers kneels beside what appears to be a Sherman tank, its angular silhouette unmistakable against the early morning sky. He pulls at a corner of the hull, and the entire structure collapses inward like a deflating balloon. Within minutes, what moments ago looked like 30 tons of American armor now fits into a canvas bag barely larger than a kit sack. This is not sabotage. This is not mechanical failure. This is Operation Fortitude, and this collapsible phantom represents one of the most audacious deceptions in military history. Across southern England, entire armies that existed only as rubber and canvas were being assembled, and German reconnaissance aircraft were photographing exactly what British intelligence wanted them to see. The question was never whether the deception would work. The question was whether an invasion could succeed without it. The problem facing Allied planners in 1943 was existential and mathematical. Any amphibious assault on occupied Europe would require concentrating forces at embarkation points, and those concentrations would be visible from the air. The Germans knew an invasion was coming. They knew it would likely target northern France. What they didn't know was where along hundreds of miles of coastline the blow would fall. If German intelligence could identify the actual invasion assembly areas, they could position their panzer divisions accordingly, and the beaches would become killing grounds. Strategic deception had been practiced for centuries, but never on the scale now required. Previous wars had seen dummy positions and false camps, but these were local efforts, easily penetrated by competent reconnaissance. What was needed was nothing less than the creation of phantom armies, convincing enough to deceive the entire German intelligence apparatus for months on end. The challenge seemed impossible. Every previous attempt at large-scale military deception had eventually been penetrated, and the consequences of failure here would be measured in tens of thousands of lives lost in the surf of Normandy. The solution emerged from an unlikely collaboration between theatrical set designers, engineers, and intelligence officers working at a secret facility known simply as Colonel Turner's department. The chief innovation was conceptual before it was technical. Rather than hiding the real invasion force, they would create a fake one so compelling that German intelligence would become fixated on it. The dummy equipment needed to be convincing from the air at reconnaissance altitudes, typically between 3,000 and 10,000 meters, and had to be deployable quickly enough to simulate realistic military movements. The engineers settled on inflatable structures made from rubberized canvas, supported by internal frames of lightweight metal tubing. A dummy Sherman tank, when deflated, weighed approximately 30 kilograms compared to the real vehicle's 33 tons. Inflation required nothing more than a standard air pump, and 4 men could erect a convincing tank in under 20 minutes. The manufacturing process was scattered across Britain for security. Canvas production occurred at facilities in Manchester, rubber coating in Liverpool, and final assembly in workshops outside London. The inflatable tanks measured 5.8 meters in length and 2.6 meters in width, matching the actual Sherman's dimensions exactly. Surface detailing included molded tracks, rivets, and even the characteristic American star marking. Under certain lighting conditions, the deception was penetrable up close. The canvas developed an unnatural sheen in direct sunlight. But from reconnaissance altitude, they were indistinguishable from the genuine article. Production numbers remain partially classified, but declassified War Office documents suggest at least 400 inflatable tanks were manufactured, alongside similar numbers of artillery pieces, lorries, and landing craft. Each piece cost roughly £15 to produce, compared to the thousands required for actual equipment. By April 1944, entire dummy formations had been deployed across southeast England. The first United States Army group, FUSAG, existed only on paper and in German intelligence assessments, but it appeared to occupy Kent and Sussex with a strength of 11 divisions. Dummy landing craft crowded the harbours at Dover and Folkestone. Inflatable tanks sat in neat rows in fields that German reconnaissance flights photographed daily. Allied intelligence monitored German radio traffic and knew the deception was working. Wehrmacht intelligence reports identified FUSAG as the primary invasion threat, and critically, they believed it would strike at the Pas de Calais, the narrowest crossing point to France. Meanwhile, the actual invasion force assembled 200 miles west in Hampshire and Dorset, largely ignored. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. The German response validated the entire operation. Their Abwehr intelligence service produced detailed assessments of FUSAG's composition, identifying divisions that existed only as canvas and rubber. They tracked the Phantom Army's supposed commander, General George Patton, whose genuine reputation as a fighting general made him the perfect choice to lead an imaginary force. Wehrmacht deployments reflected their certainty. The 15th Army remained concentrated at the Pas de Calais even after the Normandy landings began on June 6th. 15 divisions, including several panzer formations, stayed positioned against an invasion that would never come, whilst the real Allied forces established their beachhead 150 miles southwest. The psychological effect extended beyond mere misdirection. Even after D-Day, German High Command believed Normandy might be a diversion, expecting the real invasion at Calais. The dummy army had become so embedded in enemy planning that they couldn't abandon their assumptions even when evidence contradicted them. The Americans had developed similar dummy equipment, but British production was earlier and more extensive. American inflatable tanks arrived in theatre from mid-1944, manufactured by companies including Goodyear, but British units had been operational since late 1943. The Germans, interestingly, never developed equivalent technology at scale. They relied on traditional camouflage and concealment rather than active deception through false targets. Soviet forces used dummy equipment extensively, particularly wooden tanks and aircraft, but these were cruder constructions designed for shorter-term local deceptions rather than the sustained strategic effort mounted by Britain. The impact of Operation Fortitude and its Phantom Army is difficult to quantify precisely, but historians generally agree it was decisive. By keeping 15 German divisions away from Normandy during the critical first days of the invasion, the deception likely prevented the destruction of the Allied beachhead. Casualty estimates vary, but military analysts suggest that without the deception, Allied losses could have been double or triple the 10,000 casualties actually suffered on D-Day. The inflatable technology itself influenced post-war military doctrine. Both NATO and Warsaw Pact forces developed sophisticated dummy equipment during the Cold War, and modern inflatable decoys remain in use today. Several surviving examples of the original 1944 equipment are preserved at the Imperial War Museum in London and the D-Day Museum in Portsmouth, their canvas now brittle, their rubber perished, but their historical significance undimmed. A field in Kent, May 1944. Morning light catches the angular shape of a Sherman tank that isn't there, photographed by a German pilot who doesn't know he's being deceived. Across England, an army assembles from rubber and air and meticulous attention to detail. In Normandy, beaches wait for an invasion that will succeed, partly because an entire German army is looking the wrong way, fixated on a threat that exists only in their intelligence reports and in fields full of ghosts. The British didn't just hide their invasion force, they built a fake one so convincing that the enemy believed in it even after the truth had landed on the beaches. That wasn't just deception. That was turning the enemy's own competence against them, making their thoroughness their weakness, their certainty their blindness. The best trick, as it turned out, was showing them exactly what they expected to see, and watching them believe it until it was far too late to matter.